The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were the fabled gardens in the capital of the Babylonian Empire, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and they are the only wonder whose existence is argued amongst historians. In this video, we'll answer what the Hanging Gardens were, where they were located, and why such a huge wonder was built. But before we begin, you can subscribe to motivate me to do more new videos. Thank you, and let's begin. According to several legends, the Hanging Gardens were built by Nebuchadnezzar II, who was the second king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. He came to power in 605 BCE, following the death of Nebuchadnezzar. You may have heard that it was Nebuchadnezzar who sacked Jerusalem and then enslaved the Jewish people in Babylon. Going back to our wonder, he presented the Hanging Gardens to his Median wife, Queen Amytis, who was missing the beautiful hills and valleys of her homeland. This was attested by the Babylonian priest Berossus in about 290 BC, and later quoted by Jewish historian and general Josephus in the 1st century AD. He, Nebuchadnezzar, also erected elevated places for walking of stone, and made it resemble mountains, and built it so that it might be planted with all sorts of trees. He also erected what was called a pensile paradise, because his wife was desirous to have things like her own country, she having been bred up in the palaces of Media. Later, the gardens were also described by other ancient historians. Herodotus, however, who describes Babylon in his histories, doesn't mention the Hanging Gardens. Maybe the gardens were not yet well known to the Greeks at the time of his visit. But do you know what is the most mysterious? No Babylonian sources mention the gardens, either their construction or existence, even in a ruined state. There is also no mention of Queen Amytis. Even King Nebuchadnezzar never mentioned the gardens in his works. It's getting more and more interesting. Now let's see what science says about the gardens. In 1899 CE, archaeological excavations began at ancient Babylon. Although many ancient structures, such as the double walls and the Ishtar Gate, have been found, there is no trace of the legendary gardens. Literally nothing. A promising find of 14 vaulted rooms during excavations of the South Palace of Babylon turned out to be nothing more spectacular than storerooms. Another series of excavations much nearer the river and part of another of the king's palaces have revealed large drains, walls, and what could have been a reservoir, all necessary irrigation features for the gardens, but not proof positive of the fabled lost wonder. It is still possible, however unlikely, that evidence exists beneath the Euphrates, which cannot be excavated safely at present. The river flowed east of its current position during the time of Nebuchadnezzar II, and little is known about the western portion of Babylon. So given the absence of archaeological evidence for the existence of the wondrous Hanging Gardens of Babylon, could it be that this lush oasis has actually been wrongly attributed? This is the argument of some scholars. In the last century, a theory appeared that the gardens were not in Babylon, but actually in Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire. They were older, well-documented gardens constructed by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Oxford scholar Stephanie Dalley posits that during the intervening centuries, the two sites became confused, and the extensive gardens at Sennacherib's palace were wrongly attributed to Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Archaeological excavations have found traces of a vast system of aqueducts attributed to Sennacherib by an inscription on its remains, which Dalley proposes were part of an 80-kilometer series of canals, dams, and aqueducts used to carry water to Nineveh with water-raising screws used to raise it to the upper levels of the gardens. Greek historian Diodorus ascribes the construction to Assyrian king. He states that the garden was in the shape of a square with each side approximately 4 plethra long. The garden was tiered, with the uppermost gallery being 50 cubits high. The walls, 22 feet thick, were made of brick. The bases of the tiered sections were sufficiently deep to provide root growth for the largest trees, and the gardens were irrigated from the nearby Euphrates. Besides, the name Babylon means Gate of the Gods and was given to several Mesopotamian cities. Sennacherib renamed the cities of Nineveh after gods, which suggests that he wished his city to be considered a Babylon. Only Josephus names Nebuchadnezzar as the king who built the gardens. Diodorus specifies Assyrian king. By contrast, Sennacherib left written descriptions, and there is archaeological evidence of his water engineering. Also, his grandson Assurbanipal pictured the mature garden on a sculptured wall panel in his palace. Doesn't matter where they were located, or if they even existed. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon remain one of the most captivating mysteries of the ancient world. Their location, their patron, their purpose, and their fate remain ultimately unknowable. The distinctly Hellenistic lens upon which we rely for our accounts of this lost wonder, coupled with the absence of sufficient archaeological evidence, ensures that the secrets of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the second oldest of all 7 wonders of the traditional ancient world, remain tantalizingly just out of reach.